Well, good evening, and welcome to the May 16, 2023 Budget, Finance, and Investment Committee. And our first order of business will be to approve our minutes from May 4th, 2023. We'll call on our Vice Chairman, Paul Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I reviewed the minutes as sent out on email and find them in order and move for approval.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Now, before we start calling our folks up, I want to remind everyone as you come forward, state your name and your position, and also whether or not you agree with the mayor's recommendation. Now, having said that, we're going to call up Circuit Court. Okay. Welcome to come on up. We will, according to our Deputy Finance Director, continue as we have in our first meeting. If there is an objection or an addition or subtraction to the mayor's recommendation, then you would have to make a motion. If not, then we would automatically refer that to our approval from this committee. So basically, if you're happy with that, but I need a motion to that effect. I have a motion from Vice Chairman and a second. Mr. Serino, any questions? Call roll.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Serino?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, so motion carries. Okay, please continue. Circuit Court.
I'm Tammy Albert, standing in for Melissa Harold, and I apologize. Her mother passed away, and we do agree with the mayor's recommendation. Oh, could you hear me? We agree to the mayor's recommendation.
Are there any questions for Tammy? The largest thing I see is $5.99 other charges, court costs. What is that coming from? What, about $13,000?
That's where you pay those quarterly. Those are the mandated court costs that went up quarterly that we get reimbursed for.
So they're mandated by the state. Okay, well, that explains why it's in there then. All right, that was the main thing I saw. Most of this seems to be pretty much a continuation budget, a little bit more on your data processing service. Did you have an increase there on a bid or something, or? Okay.
They requested no new positions. That line item did go up $14,000, and then their revenue is coming in better. So they have not currently had to use any of the money that we passed as a safeguard, and so their revenue is coming in better. So they do plan to stay excess fees next year.
Well, that sounds good. Okay.
Mr. Chair, just a question. Are we projecting $240,000 this coming year in revenue for some Circuit Court? I'm looking on page 3 of tab 1. I just want to make sure I'm reading that correctly.
Just to clarify, yes, but that's not their excess fees. So we actually budgeted very conservatively and budgeted 0 excess fees from them. Those are fines that would pass through, but that's not the excess fees that would cover their salaries or payroll or things like that. Those are the actual fines and court costs that are collected, yes. But now keep in mind, their revenue does cover, it just doesn't run through our books to cover their salaries, and so far it is doing that.
Any other questions for Tammy, or any suggestions or changes to the mayor's recommendation? Hearing none, we will mark this one down as being approved by this committee. Tammy, thank you. Next item is the Circuit Court Judge. I think, Darrell, are you here? Or who's going to cover that for us? Don't see anybody jumping up to do that, so we're going to skip that for now. Make sure we got in touch with Mr. Scarlett. Next up is the General Sessions, and Mr. Flatt.
Jacob Flatt here on behalf of General Sessions Courts, and we agree with the mayor's recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a clarification?
Please.
So the budget in front of you has been, the mayor has changed his request for the salary line item for General Sessions judges. That has been decreased to the state required increase provided by the AOC Association of Courts. So that dollar amount is $20,000 lower for the judge's salary.
That line 189, Michael.
I'm going to it right
102.
now. 102?
I'm sorry, yes.
So let me, for the record, I need to read this number for the minutes tonight. That line item was reduced $20,000 along with the associated Social Security, Medicare, and pension amounts, and the disability insurance amount. So the new total for that category would be, Commissioner Gooch got me off my page to revenue.
$2,690,212.
Yep, correct.
Read that one more time, Mark.
$2,690,212.
Thank you. Mayor, you recognize.
Thank you. So a bit of explanation. So in the original budget proposal, we had a $5,000 salary increase for the 4 General Sessions judges, and upon research, we realized that the Juvenile Court judge is also a part of that scale, and Michael did some investigation, and we attempted to insert an additional $5,000 for a total of $25,000 for the judges. Upon further review and consultation with Nick Christensen, we found out that we may not have the authority to do that, but that has to be done by private act as per TCA 1615-5003. We're not through looking into this. We think that's where we're going to end up, but this may come back up before this process is done. We just want to make sure that whatever we do is in accordance with the law. So I'm requesting this, and I've talked to the judges, and we've pulled this out. It may stay out, or I may ask for it to be reinserted. So I just thought an explanation was in order. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think that goes along the lines with, like the county commission, we can vote ourselves a raise for the next session, not for current. For instance, if we voted a pay raise for ourselves in this budget, it could not take effect until after our term was over, basically 3.5 years from now, or however long it is. So I think that's part of the problem we've run into with that statute. But at any rate, any other questions for Jake?
Chairman, so the raises that the judges are asked for is 5%?
They get a cost of living raise, which I think is
Yeah.
around 4%.
4%,
but
okay.
That's by state statute, so.
And if I may, Mr. Commissioner, so this was a $5,000 and then the 4%. So we're withdrawing the $5,000 because we think it conflicts with what code says that this body has to send a private act to the General Assembly before that can be done. That's what we think right now. So we decided to pull that 5,000 out. They still get the 4%. Yes, sir.
Any other questions from the committee on the general sessions budget? Hearing or seeing no objection, we will also add this to our approved list. Thank you, Mr. Flatt.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Next is the drug court. Lachelle Ricks. Lachelle, there you go.
Good evening. Lachelle Ricks for Recovery Court, and I agree with the mayor's recommendations for our budget.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Recognize.
I think I'm going to go to the mayor first on this. Mayor, we and you have had discussions considering the problem we have with space for recovery courts, and I know you have been working on that, but I don't see it in the budget. Am I missing this, or?
No, sir, you're not missing it. It's not in there because that will belong in capital projects. And if you want further clarification on where that's going to be, let me just ask Michael to comment on that further. But no, that is still in the overall budget, and we're still fully committed to that.
Okay, so we're good. We got it in capital projects, right?
Michael, could you elaborate, please, sir? Thank you.
So the mayor has come to me and asked me to try to find some funding for that because they are cramped with space over there pretty significantly from my understanding. So we are working through some options. As we progress through this budget, we'll open up 2 or 3 options that I would imagine the mayor would bring back to this body when we get a little closer to the conclusion of this. But the mayor is correct. That would need to go through our capital projects fund. There is some opportunity for, as we close out some projects in there, to have some leftover money that we could move to that. That's one option that we're exploring. And then we could also explore some other options as far as we could piggyback onto a bond we're going to issue in a couple months. We could also look at a budget amendment towards the end of this year. So there's several options, but none of those would be in her category, her major category right here.
Fine, just as long as we have, I know you're on this, so I just want to make sure we got money in the budget because this is something that is absolutely needed.
This is a priority. Absolutely, this is a priority. And so I've just given to Michael to find out the best way to fund it before we conclude this process. And so that's all we're doing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Recognize Sonia. I'm sorry. Oh, thank you. I've just been told that we need to wish happy birthday to Ms. Ricks here. So happy birthday. All right. Thank you very much, Sonia. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions on the drug court's budget from the committee?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have another one.
Please go ahead.
So how many employees are you expecting to hire this coming budget?
We don't have any new hires slated for the upcoming budget.
So you have, how many employees do you have right now?
24.
Including behavioral therapists,
Yes.
part-times and all that?
Yes, and reentry.
Okay. You don't foresee us needing any more employees for this coming up year?
Not at this point because we just don't have the space to bring enough people in or to put any more employees.
Okay, thank you.
Line item 399, other contracted services. I noticed there's a pretty substantial increase there. What does that entail?
It is for our drug screens. We've got a lot more people in our program now, and so the cost of our drug screens has gone up. And our AverHealth also does a 3% increase every year, so I counted for that as well.
Also, this may be a question for Michael on 204 pensions. Is that just the increase in our pensions, the way it works out for her number of employees?
That's correct. Also, she has gotten quite a few, probably more than any other department this year, grants. And so that's another reason I believe, I'm looking at Sonia, she can correct me, I believe within the past 3 months, we had at least 5 new positions through the EBJP grant. And so some of those are a result of that increasing over last year. However, most of her budget has revenue to offset that, that's grant funded. And most of her grants were anywhere from 2 to 3 years. And so we anticipate bringing a budget amendment in August to book some more grant revenue for, and to clean up some of her expense line items in August, because she's still spending some of that grant revenue this year on some plasma materials. But any grant expenses that we booked, we offset with the revenue so that those do cancel out for this budget cycle.
Okay, one more, 599, other charges from mental health court, showing what, 40,000, 41, 216, what is that?
Go ahead.
The reason that went up is we got quite a few grants. That 599 is going to encompass her mental health court grant, her veterans treatment grant, her EBJP grant, and 2 or 3 other grants that I cannot remember the name off the top of my head.
Are you saying that's pass-through money?
Yes, I'm saying it's grant money.
Okay.
Which, when we look at revenue, it'll be offset by revenue.
That answered my questions. Any further questions from the committee? Hearing none, we're also going to accept the drug court's mayor's recommendation and add that to our approval list. Thank you. And happy birthday again. Okay, other administrations of justice, probation, Alyssa? Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Alyssa Phillips, the Director of Probation and Recovery Services. I would like to agree with the mayor's recommendation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
You recognize?
So how many employees do you have right now?
I have 20.
How many are you asking for?
I'm not asking for any this year.
But you asked your officers, it looks like your difference of, is that 20,000? What's the difference between your probation officers and the mayor's recommendation? Line 111.
That would be, 111.
Alyssa, that was the additional position that during the budget meeting that we changed that during that meeting, but that was the original request.
Okay, to clarify, originally I'd asked for a position last fiscal year, and that was declined. I had inquired about that position again this year, early on with Sonia, and then after much thought, I felt like I couldn't justify it. So at the mayor's meeting, I did not want to follow up with that position.
You're good with the mayor then?
Yes.
Anyone else from the committee have a question? I noticed you are about 40,000 less on 205. Is that just the way our people opted on their insurance?
Yes, sir.
And other contracted services were up about 14,000 there.
Yeah, other contracted services that is going to be our Crimson Security. The contract for that is actually up, so their hourly rate will be going up to amount of $24 and I believe 90 cents. We've gotten a letter of notice that they're ending services, so that will actually be an RFP that'll go out for bid. So the way I budgeted it was worst case scenario at the new rate for the same hourly wage.
Okay, sounds good to me. Any further comments from the committee? Hearing none, we'll also accept the mayor's recommendation and add it to our approval list. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chancery Court. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Adam Dodd. I'm the Clerk and Master for Chancery Court, and we agree with the Mayor's recommendation. Of course, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
The only thing I had down is you added about 20,000 on deputies. Did you add a deputy, or is that just pay that's generated?
That's part of the 3.25% lift to the table plus the step increases. There's no new positions in this budget.
Okay. This is pretty much a continuation budget too, counting your step increase and the lift there.
And I'll clarify one thing, just because this is going to be across the board. Sonia's staff goes through every year and looks at everybody's experience, and so sometimes somebody's part-time may bump them up a step because of the way we calculate it when they came in. Maybe they had a partial year, and they were able to claim more experience. So that's part of every year's salary analysis to make sure that we're following the commission's pay chart that they approved. So I just want to point that out, because we did this year. I know her office did a lot of cleanup this year as far as experiences. I noticed that a lot. So there could be some of that in there too, as well, as her staff goes through and make sure everybody's experience is where it needs to be.
We did look at recommendations from HR when I came into office on the 2 part-timers, and so the increase in part-time has to do with bringing them up to the scale that HR recommends for part-time pay. There's no new part-timers.
Thank you, Mr. Dodd. Any other observations or questions from our committee? I see no recommendations for a change, so we'll also accept the mayor's recommendation and add that to our agenda.
Thank you all.
Next up is the Juvenile Court. I think this is our newest judge now, is that correct?
Mayor, Travis Lampley, the Juvenile Court Judge, and we are in agreement with the Mayor's recommendation.
So, Nick, these numbers also include the problem that Mayor just told us about General Sessions? On the difference in what is requested and what the mayor is that the same thing we're having a problem with on the 5%, or?
No, sir. Their budget does correctly reflect the 4% mandated by the AOC. It is correct in your packet. Depending on what we found out today, we would have had to amend this one, but based on the legal analysis we found today, we actually had to amend the other one. So this one was going to be amended tonight, but we had to amend the other one based on the legal analysis we got from Nick today.
Basically, the only thing I'm seeing is that step increase in the 3. Any other questions from the committee? Hearing none, we're going to also add this to our approved list and take the mayor's recommendation. Thank you. Next up is our district attorney.
Commissioners, Mr. Mayor, my name is Jennings Jones with the District Attorney's Office, and we are pleased to accept the recommendation of the Mayor.
Any questions from our committee? It's actually a little bit less than what we've seen the year before, so congratulate you on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There you go. Seeing no motions from the committee, we'll go ahead and add this to our accepted budget list. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is the Office of the Public Defender.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Gerald Melton, the Public Defender. We're happy to agree with the mayor's recommendation for this budget.
As for our audience that's looking in, these budgets are very tight, so congratulate y'all on that.
Harold, how many public defenders do we have?
In total, 14. And 2 of those are county-funded positions. Those are reflected in this budget.
The other ones are paid by who?
Paid by the state.
Any other questions from our committee? Hearing none, seeing no recommendations to change, we'll also accept the recommendations from the mayor for the Office of Public Defender. Thank you, Mr. Melton. Next up is Youth Services.
Hi, I'm Tina Bigby. I'm Director of Youth Services, and I agree with the mayor's recommendation.
Biggest jump I see is your employee and dependent insurance, and you don't have a lot of control of that depending on what your employees choose. Any questions or changes that anyone on the committee would like to make?
312 contracts with private agencies. What is that?
That is pass-through funds for Rutherford County Teen Learning Center. It's Genesis, actually, Genesis Teen Learning Center.
Mayor, you recognize.
So this budget was, for me, it was a particularly difficult budget because Tina came and asked for a position, and she made, I wasn't going to share this, but I think I would like for you guys to know. So she came and asked for a position, and she made in my mind, a pretty persuasive case, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I think it's important looking downstream. If during this process, gentlemen, over the next few weeks, there's an opportunity for us to fund an additional position in county government, and you would come to mayor and say, Mayor, is there one position, we got a little more room than we thought we were going to have in our budget? Is there a position out there that can help the county? It would be a position in this particular department. And if, Tina, if you want to explain that, if it's okay with the committee, I'd like for her to hear that. I don't want to amend the budget, but I want you guys, if it's all right, to put that in your back pocket. And if there's an opportunity later on through this cycle for us to revisit it, I'd like for you to at least be informed as to what she brought to the table. Do you mind, Tina? Thank you.
I explained to the mayor that I have been with the county almost 28 years. We have had 7 employees for the entire time I've been with Youth Services. We still have 7 employees. We have managed to, make do with, what we have. And we are to the point with, we do juvenile probation. We do a lot of preventative work with juveniles. And we are in a situation now where we are finally in great need for another probation officer due to the numbers that we see with, crimes with juveniles and, with county growth and just, as everybody else are having growing pains as well. But I told the mayor that I was finally ready and at a point where we were in great need.
So what amount are we looking at What amount do you need to hire somebody?
I would have to ask Michael.
Approximately $62,000. That includes benefits and things like that. I believe this salary.
Benefits? Does that include benefits?
Correct. I believe the salary was right around 51 or 52 is what I have noted.
And Commissioner, that's a ballpark number, okay? So, but it's close, but that's a ballpark number. But, and again, quite honestly, I wasn't going to bring this up. But she made in 28 years. So, and Commissioner Harris, you in particular are quite passionate about dealing with the troubled youth in our community. And I think this is something that she does on behalf of our community. And so if there's an opportunity, as we go through this, I'm not asking you to make a decision tonight. I'm just informing you of if there's a possibility and we can fund one other position, this would be the first position I would want to add. So that's why I'm bringing this to your attention.
Well, in my opinion, Mayor, I think I'm going to make a motion to include up to $62,000. And also I want to put a note, Mayor, we'll look at the opioid abatement council, and maybe we can take some funds from there to help fund this as well. So I can't give you an answer on that. That'll have to go before the opioid committee, but I'm pretty sure it probably is in there. I think, Michael, it's probably in our parameters.
Yeah, let Michael's asking to speak on this. So
I need to revise a number for you because I didn't have medical in there. And I'm using a round number for an estimate for medical because we don't know. We always do that. If you could revise if that's the motion, if you could revise it to 76,000, and I have to budget the 14,000 for, normally people don't take that, but I have to budget a family coverage for medical, and I didn't have that in the number I read you a second ago.
So, youth services, how much have we grown in youth services? So 2021 or 2022, how much have we jumped from there to where you are now? Big increase in youth services and in the amount of people we're dealing with?
Chairman, can we get a second on that motion that's been made?
Make the motion. Okay. I would like to make the motion that we include up to, would you say 72,000?
76.
76,000 for, to include in her budget over the mayor's request.
And I might add, it's probably going to take a little while to find this person. So again, that's the 12-month budget figure. So obviously, the actual funding might be a little less than that if she doesn't find anybody until, September or something like that, obviously. But yeah.
Okay, you've heard the motion. Do I hear a second? I have a second. Any other discussion? I have a question. Do you have a wait time because of lack of personnel as far as people stacking up, or, the job load? What's the story there? We're having to work overtime to get through these, or I don't know how your job works, so please explain.
So the problem is right now we are doing mostly prevention work and pretrial diversion work. So in the past, we have, we also provide county probation services as well, and that's just a level of probation that we've provided for many years. But at this point, we've had to stop our probation services and focus on the pretrial diversion services and the prevention services to maintain our caseloads.
So you're basically not being able to do your full job.
Right.
Okay. Commissioner Irving.
Quick question. Commissioner Harris brought up the possible use of some opioid money, and I was just trying to understand what's the relationship between, or the possible use, additional use of those funds for some of the other services that are potentially related along these lines, and I just don't know the answer. Could someone give me kind of a little bit of an overview?
Well, if some of her services includes for drugs or opioids or any of that stuff, it falls under certain criteria to might be eligible. Let me say might be eligible for some funds. So we're able to give funds to county officials or county organizations that help in any type of counseling or any type of areas in that area. So does that answer your question, or?
Yes, I'll get with Michael and you or whoever later. I was trying to understand, because there's a number of areas we've kind of been talking about, and it's popped into my head a couple times. Could some of that money be used? But I haven't heard it mentioned, so I've been a little reluctant to just bring it up to say, well, could we use some of those funds? But it sounds like it has to be tied to fairly specific parameters, and that's good. You don't want that money to go somewhere else. But I was just trying to understand kind of the parameters, the background, get a better understanding, not just necessarily for this budget, but for others as well. Just trying to understand it.
Well, if it comes to prevention, so for instance, drug court, we have the ability that we can hire case managers, behavioral therapists. We can do that if the opioid is covered under prevention. It's also covered under counseling. So this would fall under counseling, I would believe. So I would need to check and see if it does fall under those parameters. We'll just go to the state and ask them on it, but we have the funds available if we're able to do this. But what I would suggest to do is that we increase the budget, and then if I am able to get any of that money, it would be applied towards that, and then we just have that money left over in her budget.
Thank you.
That money also has a deadline on it too, right?
Yes. We have a 2-year deadline for $1.5 million. So there's a lot of things that we want to look at. I definitely want to look at county employees and county services as much as any.
It's a 4-year deadline, and pretty much anything prevention is covered. Anything related to opioid is covered. I'm looking at the state regs right here. Plus anything that engages nonprofits, faith-based communities, and community coalitions to support people in treatment and recovery, and to support family members in their efforts to support other persons with opioid addiction in the family. And then you can also help fund peer recovery centers, which may include support for social events, computer access, or other services with or for persons with opioid addictions and co-occurring mental health conditions.
Any other questions from the committee statements? We've got a motion and a second on the floor, and this is also possible that it would come, the money could come from the opioid committee. That'd have to go to that committee and be voted on there, and then come back to the commission to get that approval. As it stands, this would come out of our general fund like everything else. Any other questions?
Yeah, so we keep it under her budget, but if we're able to help her, then we can apply that money, and then her budget would just come in short for the next year. Does that sound right?
I believe
Okay.
you're correct.
Thank you.
No further questions. Mark, call roll.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Srinya?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is domestic violence. And let's see, Gary Green, Ms. Green, are you here? Okay. We'll move to the next item, which is Correctional Work Center.
Evening, Superintendent Cope with the Correctional Work Center. I've met with Mayor Carr along with our board and gladly accept his recommendation for this year's budget.
I don't know how you managed to reduce your budget, but I'm happy to see that. Anytime I see that, I want to make a comment there, but thank you.
Welcome. So was the mayor.
I will say, Bill does an absolutely fantastic job out there, he and his staff. And when we go out there for those board meetings, the place is absolutely spotless. And that's reflective of the great pride that Bill and the others have out there in the work they do. So
thank you.
Bill does a good job.
Bill, on that $3.99, was that health services or food?
$3.99 is other contracted services. That's our Summit food service, our medical, and our mechatronics instructor.
All three together?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, I could have guessed any one of them had been right. Thank you. So, any questions for Superintendent? It's actually a lower request than last year, and we're happy to accept it since I see no changes. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you all.
Next is Juvenile Detention.
Good evening, Lynn Duke, Juvenile Detention. This budget was presented to our Juvenile Detention Board, and they agreed with the mayor's recommendation, and so do I.
Then only C2. Well, on your attendance, is that where you moved some from part-time to full-time, or what's the story on that? About 60,000 more and 164?
Attendance is for full-time detention officers. We did not add any full-time detention officers, so I would say that that's going to be just part of the salary increase.
Data processing services, 317.
$317 has increased. I made sure to reduce some of my other line items so that that would kind of be a flat or a no increase for the total budget. The difference is that I am asking for a new jail management software called Jail Tracker, which the Correctional Work Center is currently using. Our current jail management system is ancient, just to be honest, and I know that the Correctional Work Center and the Office of Information Technology has been quite pleased with Jail Tracker and their support and their service, and I looked at it, and it's a great program, so that's why we went with that one.
Questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Duke, we've had some difficult times filling positions in the past. Where are you now?
We still have one part-time educational assistant that we have not filled. We have a open internal corporal position that we have not begun to interview yet for, and I think we have just recently had an employee that did not show for her first day at work, so we have that opening. So I've got maybe 2.5, let's call it, that are currently open as of today.
And your turnover is I remember your turnover being quite high. How has that been this year?
We're improving. I would like to say that we're improving. The increase in the salary has made an incredible positive effect for our department. It's just trying to find the right person to work with the young folks.
Any other questions from the committee? Hearing none, we're going to accept the mayor's recommendation on juvenile detention and add that to our list. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is fire rescue.
Good evening. My name is Larry Farley. I'm the Rutherford County Fire Chief, and I accept the mayor's proposed budget.
Chairman P.
You recognize.
Chief Farley, can you tell us what line item the volunteer departments are under?
That'd be $399, other contracted services.
Can you tell us how many volunteer departments the county has now?
Well, you got Amelville Volunteer Fire Department, you got Las Casas Volunteer Fire Department, and you have Christiana Volunteer Fire Department, and Eagleville is a municipality.
So we do not fund Eagleville?
I think we give them $60,000 last year.
Okay. Time we put the Las Casas Fire Department problem to bed. We need to fund all these departments equally or don't fund any of them. I don't think it's right to discriminate. Las Casas has been there a long time. They're doing the best they can do with what they've got. We don't need to leave our community without fire protection of any kind until this new building is finished. With the mayor's approval, I'm going to ask that he changes his recommendation to give all the volunteer departments the equal amount of money, give them the $80,000 apiece. But I know they've got to have $25,000 for their insurance right up front, probably right out of the first draw. Isn't it paid in 4 draws?
Yes, sir.
Their money's paid in 4 draws. I'd like to see this money paid. Their first draw is, what, July?
Yes, sir, I believe it's right.
And the second one will be in October. That'll be half their money. That'll be $40,000. Let them come back to whichever committee they need to come to, public safety or budget, for a review of how they spent their $40,000, because this money is for operational cost to fight fires solely. That's the reason we give them this money, this for the insurance and helping to fight the fires. Now, I understand that we do keep the maintenance up on the fire trucks that the county owns. Is that right?
Yes, sir, we do. The primary for errors, the new trucks we bought, we're doing all the maintenance, preventive maintenance, and all the maintenance on those trucks.
Okay. Mayor Carr, can you help us out on this and change your recommendation to change it to $80,000 apiece for the 4?
Let me ask Michael a quick question, if it's okay. Michael, historically, why have we given, or can you comment on why we have given Eagleville $60,000 as opposed to the $80,000? Chief Farley, can you comment on that?
I do not know the history of that.
I think during Ketchum's administration, everybody was getting $60,000. He raised Kittrell, Amelville, and Christiana's budget to $80,000 and kept Eagleville and Las Casas at $60,000.
Okay. I have no objection.
I want to read a number then for the minutes here. the new amount would be $10,969,295, and that would be an increase of $40,000 to the $399 other contracted services line item. That line item would go to $320,000 from $280,000.
Let me ask something with that number I saw there. Were you adding 20,000 to Eagleville?
I think that was the.
Pay them all equal if we're going to do it.
Well, Eagleville's a municipality. You realize that. That's why I'm saying you want them all equal. I just want to make sure that was the motion.
That was my understood from Mayor Carr's new recommendation.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Excuse me, and one more time, Commissioner, if you would state clearly what that payout would be. It wouldn't be in a single tranche, but it'd be multiple tranches over what period of time again?
The pay is normally on 4 payments.
They get 20,000. That'd be 20,000 each quarter.
Right, each quarter. Pay the first 2 quarters when they're due to pay them, so they can handle their insurance and give them some operating expense money. In January, before they get their 3rd quarter pay, either come back to public safety or come back to Chief Farley for a review on how this money has been spent, and then if we see fit, pay forward if they need it. We don't know how long it'll take to finish the last Cassis building. We don't have any idea. It could be 6 months. It may be a full year. And if it is, there's no doubt we need coverage out there for a full year if it takes that long. I would like to see this kind of under Chief Farley's umbrella.
No objection.
For him to
I
watch.
just wanted to make sure I understood the payout schedule you referred to. I didn't think I heard it correctly. I did. I have no objection to $320,000 on that schedule.
Okay. And to pay and bring it back in January for a review for further pay. That is my motion.
Michael?
Yeah, I was going to say, for this specific, the mayor's recommendation to change, I think, is fine. But for my office, if we could do this in the form of a motion and take a vote so that we can have some official direction for the minutes for when my office pays out the funds, would be very helpful to the finance office.
Well, the way it works now is basically each quarter do they have to submit each quarter or only once a year?
At the first year before July 1st, before they're under contract, they'll do the hose testing, ladder testing, air pack testing, all the testing of the equipment. And they don't get a check until they turn all that information in, because that's part of their contract. Once they turn that in, I'd let Mark know, and he releases the checks.
That's correct.
If they've presented all their financial information that we're required. Yes. There's two pieces on the fire department payouts, the maintenance records and the financial records. So some of them don't get their checks until later on in the year because they're delinquent on turning in their maintenance records. So, right.
And
right.
Financial is what Mark requires from them.
Yep.
Okay, so you've given a motion. Do I hear a second? And a second.
Can I clarify one thing too? That motion for the payments restriction is just for Las Casas, correct?
I didn't hear you.
That motion that you're making is just for Las Casas, correct? For the 2 quarters, and then they have to come back for the 3rd and 4th quarter?
No, that's everybody. We are not going to discriminate against the volunteers anymore. Everybody's in the same pot, and if they can't do what we need them to do, then we'll relook at the whole idea.
And does that come through the public safety, or am I supposed to review that and make a report?
Report to public safety, so you can take care of it and report to public safety as a whole for all 4 departments.
That's correct.
If people's okay with that.
That's the way the office of the mayor would prefer it.
Good.
And I would question, what is the stipulation for making the 3rd quarter payment?
That the money was spent for firefighting operations.
Okay.
Fuel, whatever. What else do they have to have, Larry, to fight a fire? Fuel for the trucks?
Fuel for the trucks, and the equipment, all the equipment has to be inspected and be operational ready.
Right.
They have to have insurance coverage. They have to have water. They have to have electricity. I mean, there's a lot of cost.
Right, I'm aware of that. But I'm tired of hearing people kick them around. It's just that simple.
Okay, any further discussion on this vote?
You mentioned Eagleville. Is there a difference in Eagleville being in an incorporated city than the other ones? Is there a difference? Does Eagleville kick in, the city? Do they kick in?
They actually have paid firefighters, and I think their firefighters are paid on call.
So the volunteers from the Eagleville area are no different than anybody else?
Well, except they get paid for every call they go on. Eagleville pays them to respond. Paid on call. If they respond, they get a payment. If they don't respond, they don't get payment for that call. But they are paid per call.
So in essence, they are different than the other ones?
Yes, sir.
Eagleville City pays them?
They have paid staff on shift, and then their volunteers, when they respond, Eagleville pays them a payment for responding to the call.
Now, hourly pay or what? Do they pay the individual?
They pay the individual. I think it's a payment per call. Is that correct? Yeah. Payment per
Really
call.
not volunteer.
I mean, well, they're getting paid for it.
Volunteers don't get paid where I come from.
I mean, they are paid. I'm just saying they are paid to respond.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I didn't realize, I thought when Commissioner Piercy said they were all the same, they should be treated the same, they were the same. And I agreed with that. But now what I'm hearing is they are not all the same, that there is indeed, in fact, a difference because Eagleville supplements them as a paid force. So which may account, which is why I asked on the front end, why is there a difference in what's being paid Eagleville, and it appears to be that that's the reason. So I don't think it's necessary that we pay Eagleville $80,000 when that is a different situation altogether than the other three.
Do you know if Eagleville pays for their insurance and keeps their trucks up, or does the volunteers have to do that?
They're under the city of Eagleville. They take care of all that stuff.
They take care of all of it. Why have we paid Eagleville any money at all?
Because at one time Eagleville was a volunteer fire department.
And now it's not.
Well, I mean, they have paid people and they get paid to respond, so I would call them paid. Paid part-time, you might as well say.
Well, yes, if there's a motion to suspend the rules, let Chairman
So
Reed
moved.
speak. Since he's from Eagleville, I've got a motion. And a
I
second. Let me hear
don't think we need a motion to
I'd
suspend
like to
the
hear
rules
from the
since he's-
commissioner, and I
Commissioner.
can't make a motion, but I would really like to hear from Commissioner Reed, and he's got some comments. So if someone could make a motion to suspend.
We have that motion. All in
We don't-
favor signify by
You're-
saying aye.
Yeah, your commission rules do not require a suspension of the rules because any commissioner can speak at any committee meeting.
If he's recognized, we're
Yes.
going to recognize, and I did hear ayes across there, so you are recognized. You can come forward, Commissioner Reed.
This was changed, I guess, 2 years ago, I'm not sure. But Eagleville was a volunteer fire department at one time, just like all the others. But over the years, they have changed. In fact, Eagleville is in the process of building a new public safety building, just like we are. But they have a totally different contract from the volunteers. That was changed 2 years ago. We met with their city attorney. Reason being is that once we found out that they are no longer considered a volunteer, they're not a 501(c)(3) like all the others, like Las Casas, Christiana, and any of the others. That meant we could no longer be providing funds to them in that manner that we were doing it. So basically, their contract now, they are independent contractors, and we're paying them for a service. And the service we're paying them for is due to the fact of their location and the distance that they are from any fire department that we have currently is that they are looking after the area. When you look at Eagleville, you look beyond Eagleville, there is the county area that goes out the Alasona Highway. When you're going that direction out towards Cottage Grove, we have a large area in that area going back towards Chapel Hill. Their responsibility is looking after that rural area there. And they are also looking after somewhat of the area towards Rockvale currently, and they're looking back going towards the direction towards Arrington in that direction. So they were given an independent contractor's contract, and we were paying them $60,000, and that's what's in their contract as independent contractors. So that may be a difference in what you might want to see, Mayor and Mr. Chairman. It's the fact that they have a contract right now that specifies $60,000 just as independent contractor, not as volunteers. So that is the difference between Eagleville and your volunteers currently. And we caught that, I think, the last time you were doing the contracts, and their county attorney said we're no longer a 501(c)(3). So that might give you some insight in that sort of thing. Now that we're getting ready to open a public safety building out that way, they will not be having as much territory in that area. And I think once they open a public safety building out that way too, and once we get stationed out there, this could possibly be the last year that we'll be doing that, because everybody will be getting into position to know what we're doing, what's going on there. But this might fill in some of your blanks.
Hearing that information, Commissioner Piercy, would you like to modify your motion to leave Eagleville at 60,000 and raise the other three to the 80?
Yes, I'll do that.
That's the motion. How about the second? I think that was Commissioner Harris.
Explain the motion to me again.
The motion is to raise Las Casas, Christiana, and Amoville to make them all equal at 80,000 and leave Eagleville at 60,000.
So it's 300,000
So we have a motion and a
total.
second. Commissioner Irvin, you're recognized.
300,000 total.
Is that correct, Michael?
That's correct. That new
280.
total would be $10,949,295, and $300,000 for the other contracted services line item.
But still with the stipulations on the money.
Understand.
So, to my understanding, Chief, public safety building, is the Eagle volunteers, is that over? Is that gone? Is this 60,000 just for this budget and most likely won't be used again?
Well, that's up to y'all, but I mean, that Rockville will cover all the way to the Eagleville city limits. It's whatever's in the county. We'll cover that zone.
Who owns the truck at Eagleville?
They own their own. Well, they have one county truck left, I think, and then they bought their own last pumper.
Okay. So our volunteers own a truck?
Well, they have a 1990 truck.
Okay.
I think that's correct. But then I think the last one they bought, the city of Eagleville bought them a pumper. So we're not providing any future apparatus going forward.
Okay.
Any other questions on this motion? Hearing none, call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson? Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Shrino?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, that motion carries. Now, are there other parts of this budget anybody would like to comment on or make a change to, one way or the other? Mr. Gooch.
I was just going to ask, what is the funding source of the rural fire department?
Guess that falls on me. Currently, right now, we do have citus sales tax, so out of city limits collections for sales tax. That's the largest one by far, and then we also have hotel motel tax. That'd be the other largest one that would fund this, and then we have several other miscellaneous that are very small, and I don't know all those off the top of my head, but the two largest ones are the citus for sales tax and the hotel motel tax.
Okay, do you happen to know, and didn't prep you for this question, so if you don't, that's fine. What a penny would be for the rural areas?
I do not know. Off the top of my head, I do not know.
Would that be something that we could get? Or how difficult would it?
I don't know. I would have to see. I don't know that answer, how difficult that would be, because we'd have to pull. I'd have to get with the property assessor and the trustee's office and pull the assessed value. I could get it, yes. Yes, I could get it.
Okay.
But I don't know that I could get it by Thursday night, by the next meeting.
That's okay, just whenever. Thank you.
Irving.
Is most of the increase is due to personnel?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is this, and this is probably more of a Michael question, although, is whether or not it's staggered or whether we front-loaded for the whole year?
I think, and I'll let Michael answer that.
Let me cover two things on there. So part of the budget you see in front of you is last year. Last year we hired 30 firefighters. I believe those are for Rockville and Kittrell. We budgeted those for half of the year. So essentially we budgeted 15 full-time, but 30 for the 30 half of the year firefighters last year. That other half of the year is coming online. So that's going to be in here as well. And then on top of that, there are 15 additional firefighters proposed. And I'm lumping firefighters together because that is broke down between firefighters and the subsequent leaders for those shifts. But they are funded or budgeted for a full year in the budget that you have in front of you. I don't want to speak for the mayor's office or for the fire chief, but I do believe that their intention is not to hire those on July 1. But one of the reasons we budgeted for this, there's really two. One is to show the full cost of what that would be for the year. But we're also trying to have a plan for next year if this body wishes to continue with Del Webb and with Christiana. There would be an additional 24 to 30 firefighters coming online for those two stations. So that was the reason for going this route as far as putting that in the budget for a full year.
So, Chief, you got 15 firefighters per public safety building, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay, we got 15 in here for next year for one,
Last
but not
Cass.
30.
That's right. Just 15 for Last
Where's
Casas.
the other 15? Because we got two buildings
Well,
open.
Walt Hills, we've already got people at Walt Hill, and they'll just swap from that old barn-like building to that new station.
Okay, my last question to you is, this number could be lower in some effects because grant money that could come in.
That's correct.
Okay, so that number could be technically lower. It's
Well-
not guaranteed, but we do have opportunities to get grants to help with this fund.
That's correct.
Okay.
Since you mentioned grants, did we apply for a grant last year?
Yes, sir. We applied for a FEMA grant for 30 people, and that one might probably be released toward the end of September.
And what? Did we get any from that grant we applied for last
We
year?
won't know until they start issuing out.
I'm talking about the year before we applied also, right? And we were turned down then, right? So it's a possibility, but the last time that we applied, we were turned down. And I think part of that's because they see that we've been able to fund it.
Actually, if you fund them, when you get grants and you fund them and continue to keep them, that actually helps you get more grants. So we applied for 30 people on this grant, and if we get it, it'd be 100% for 3 years. 100% for 3 years.
3 years?
That won't include the 15 we're about to hire, because we've already budgeted to hire them.
Which would be a good thing.
So
all
we
the way
got
around.
15 from last year that you already got ready to fund. I mean, we got them right now. You already hired them.
No, sir.
You haven't?
We hired 30 last year to fill Kittrell and Rockville.
Two public safety buildings?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
15 is for Las Casas this year, and Walt Hill's just going to swap employees from one building to the new building.
Okay, but we have a possibility, whether what it is, I don't know, to get grants for 30 firefighters.
We've got a grant for 30, that would take care of Christiana and Del Webb for 3 years.
3 years. Then we take over the cost from there, right? Okay.
Mr. Irvin.
Okay, so we had the 30 from last year, And was that funded through that ARPA thing, or was that through another source?
No, we funded that through the general fund last year. We
Okay.
currently do not have any grants funding firefighters. That grant, the last grant we had, has expired. We applied for one in the previous year. We did not get it, and we have applied again, and that's the one that we should hear back from this fall. But currently, last year, we funded the 30 through the general fund, and then we budgeted half a year. So approximately almost $1 million is coming online, give or take 100,000 coming online this year for the full year, plus the 15 this year that would go to Las Casas. And then we already have staff at Walter Hill.
Okay, and the 15 come online whenever Las Casas comes online?
Well, we'll probably hire them the first of the year, January, February, and depends on, we'll try to get laterals who are already trained, but if we have to hire recruits, then we'll have to have 12 weeks to train those. So it really depends on what kind of people we're able to hire.
Yeah, and I'm very much in favor of conservative accounting principles. I'm just identifying there might be as much as $500,000 or so, it sounds like, to at some point think about. Is that fair?
That would be a fair statement, yes.
Fair statement, okay. Thank you.
Anyone else from the committee have a question or want to make any changes? Well, I've got a couple things that I want to state. For one, we had a vote 20-1, and I was the one that voted against manning Kittrell Station with full-time firefighters. Now, I stated it that same night, we don't have enough full-time firefighters for this county, and we don't have enough volunteers either. But what we did, in my opinion, was we booted some volunteers that didn't need booting, and that's costing us some money. And in fact, just for Las Casas people, the 15, it's going to be $1.1 million just for personnel. And that doesn't count other costs associated with that. Our county's budget grows about 3% a year, somewhere in there. The moves that we're making here for this department is about 60 to 65% increase in their budget. Now, that's a move that the commission has decided to make. I happen to disagree. I think we're moving too fast on that. Not that I have anything against firefighters. I love them. I've done too much of it myself. But I think we're moving too fast, and we're spending money that we don't have to spend where we have volunteers that can and do the job for us. Now, having said that, I'll open it up for any other questions or comments on Mr. Farley's budget. Are there any comments? Hearing none, I would assume that the committee will accept the mayor's recommendation with Commissioner Piercy's motion, having adjusted that. So we will put fire rescue's budget in our approved column also, with the adjustments from Mr. Piercy's motion. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, all committee.
Next up is building codes.
Well, while she makes her way up here, I have one clarification for your budget books. At the bottom of her budget, there was money budgeted for office equipment in line 719. That should have been line 718, motor vehicles. She did not need that much office equipment. So I just wanted to clarify that change. I did talk to the mayor about that. He was in agreement with his recommendation, but that was her original request. And when I imported it into the spreadsheet, I accidentally put it in 719 instead of 718. But that should be in motor vehicles. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tanya Bale, the Rutherford County Building Codes Department Director. And I agree with the mayor's recommendation, and I am happy to answer any questions.
What maintenance agreement that we saved about $87,000 on. What was that agreement?
That was our software that the commission purchased or agreed to purchase 5 years ago. The software agreement was fully covered by, the maintenance agreement was fully covered by building codes for the last 5 years. It is for building codes, planning, engineering, stormwater, and fire. And this year, because it's spread over multiple departments, OIT took over the maintenance agreement on that software.
Any questions for Tanya? It's actually a reduction
It is.
in last year's budget of, what, 40,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. Michael?
I want to make one clarification. When Cody was up here the first time we met, I think it was the previous Tuesday, we looked at some increases, and he mentioned that as software agreements become multi-department, they fall into his budget, and he had some increases in his budget, and we mentioned that there would be some decreases in some other people's budgets. So she has a line item here that went down, decreased $87,000. And his would have subsequently increased to pay for that software, since it now spans between at least 3 departments. But this is an example of that, of what we talked about that night. So I just wanted to point that out for you.
Any recommendations for changes, either to add to or take away?
Mr. Chairman?
Recognized.
So I want to talk about your revenue. So do we expect revenues to go up, or do you feel that they're going to go lower? I see that you brought in, and Michael, tell me if I'm wrong, 2,569,000 total license and permits. I'm on page 3, item 1. The reason I'm asking you this, because school facilities tax goes full in effect this coming year, because we still was doing some of the 750s, 1500s from the...
We will continue with the development tax until all of those lots have been exhausted. And that was the commission's desire, was to grandfather in the lots that were committed to the development tax until they've been exhausted.
Probably a Doug question, isn't it?
Yes, and we're getting close. However, Doug can only speak for the development tax lots in the unincorporated county.
Right.
We don't know how many development tax lots there is in each of the city jurisdictions. So,
But anything going forward, we're going to be with the school facilities tax.
with the exception of the lots that are out there, which is dwindling. I think there's a couple of hundred, maybe.
That would be 750 a lot, because they already paid 750 up front.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Any other questions from the committee? Michael, I've got a question for you. With these increases that we propose to take place July 1st, how much increased revenue do you estimate we'll make for all these increases? Or have you looked at them as a whole?
My super conservative number was between 1 million and 1.5 million. That's because we have noticed the last 2 years a decrease in fees collected by not just this office, but also planning, stormwater. So they have been trending down the last 3 years. I believe they're down, don't quote me on this, because I believe it was 2.5 or 2.6% last month. So that's probably a conservative number. I believe if we ran them on currently as of today, it was in the neighborhood of 1.6, 1.7 million for additional income. But that, to be conservative, if that downtrend happens with interest rates staying high, I think it could be a little less than that. And if interest rates were to drop, then I think it could go up a little bit from there.
And I can add, you're right on the money, Michael. I took last year's revenue, full year revenue, and calculated what it would be with the new rates, and it was right at 1.1 million.
Mayor, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. To be clear, so you calculated right at 1.1.
I believe that's for hers.
That's
for
correct.
her
That's
fees.
yes, that's just hers.
That's what
Yes.
that's what I was getting to. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I was clarifying as a whole. The increases will be the bulk to hers, and then there would be some for Doug and Mike's departments as well.
So is this increase built into the book?
No, we have not. I have not revised the revenue estimates from that was passed, since we're focusing on expense for these budget meetings for the most part.
Any other questions for Tanya, or any adjustments anyone would like to make on her budgets? Hearing none, we're going to accept building code's budget as recommended by the mayor and add that to our recommendations. Thank you, Tanya.
All right, thank you so much. Good.
Instead of going to trustees, I'm going to jump back up to domestic violence. I think, Sarah, didn't you just come in? Get caught up here.
Good evening, Commissioners. I do apologize for my tardiness and my appearance. I had my little one this evening, but I do agree with the mayor's recommendations as far as our budget is concerned.
Are there any questions for Ms. Green? No questions or additions or subtractions from the mayor's recommendation. We will also add domestic violence to our approved column for budget committee. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, next up is trustee.
I'm Ted Beatty, Rutherford County trustee, and I agree with the mayor's recommendation.
Another one, also a reduction. I have any questions for the trustee? Notice you took out your motor vehicle request.
I don't believe that we didn't have a request for
I'm
motor
looking at
vehicle.
the long line then.
He has a slight increase, and his only increase really is for the tax relief program. Is what I'm showing, a slight increase for that, but that's the only increase I'm showing for the tax relief program.
I bumped up the column. Thank you.
Tab, could you briefly describe tax relief program? The tax relief program?
Yes, sir.
Could you briefly describe?
Yeah, Rutherford County matches the state tax relief program up to a maximum match of $306 or the full amount of the tax. And so we've got more individuals on the program, which will obviously increase our match. And the state portion in our match is based on the tax on the first $30,000 of value, and that value will increase a little bit this year. And so with our lowered tax rate, we actually lowered the amount of tax relief, and the amount of our match also then lowered. So if there is an increase in taxes, not only will we have more individuals on the program, but it will then increase the amount of our match as well. But that is strictly the amount that we match for seniors, disabled homeowners, and disabled veterans.
You're recognized, Chairman.
Tab, known you a lot of years. You're probably the best man I ever known. So I'm going to ask a stupid question. So what is, out of 100% of our property tax, what do we collect?
That's a two-part process. We'll collect taxes in the trustee's office, and then before the 1st of April of the following year, we turn that to the Chancery Clerk and Master's Office, and they continue the collections. So when we turned over the 2021 tax, the 1st of April, in our office, we collected just over 99.5% of the value of the tax roll, and then they'll continue to collect that in the Chancery Court.
So if someone doesn't pay their taxes, Chancery Court takes it from there?
They do, and the back tax attorney. And what we do on real property, if they don't pay, is typically that property, they're served notice, and the top property is put in a tax sale. On personal property, which a lot of individuals don't realize, that businesses on property used in the business, your truck, your computer system, those type things, you pay tax at a 30% of value. That's a personal property. We work to get a judgment on those that don't pay. So we work through the court to get a judgment and have them pay through the court. But on the real property, we just get a lien against the property and sell it.
Tab line 399, other contracted services, got a bit of an increase there. What was that?
We're proposing to work. There is a company called Cash Vest 3-in-1. They're endorsed by NACO and the County Officials Association that will help us with investments. They will help us chart what our buffer cash flow needs are and how far out we can comfortably invest based on our cash flow needs. And they will also help us evaluate our banking services when we do RFPs. And this year, the market has been good. To this point, as of the end of the month, we're up about $9.5 million in interest income, just as a function of the market. But we'd like to work to make sure we're getting every dollar working for us. So that's what that money would be for, to pay to work with them to help us in our cash flow and banking analysis. They're not a bank, nor do they sell any investments. They just would simply serve as an advisor to help us maximize our cash reserves from an investment standpoint.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the committee? Oh, I did. You did. Any other questions from the committee? Hearing none, we're going to accept the trustees' budget as recommended by the mayor. Thank you, Ted. Next is the Ambulance Service Fund.
Good evening. Brian Gaither, Ambulance Service Director, and I agree with the mayor's recommendation on the budget.
Brian, how many people will you be adding this year?
We're requesting 18, but along the same lines with Chief Farley, it's for Las Casas and Walter Hill, and we, best case scenario, hiring them in January, which is probably not realistic because those buildings are probably May or June to be completed.
I just want to clarify, 16 of those would be for the public health and safety. 2 would not be. They would be for the convalescent runs that the ambulance service makes.
Correct.
As to revenue, how much money did we write off last year? Bills that we're not going to collect money on. How much did we write off?
I would have to go back and run a report to get you some exact figures, but our write-offs are little because we bill a set rate, but we know going into that some insurance companies won't pay that, Medicare, for instance. So they're not billing what our normal rate is, so that generates a more than 50% write-off just on every one of those calls. But as far as not collected, our billing company gives us that every month. I could get it and get it back, get that information to you.
Substantial amount?
It is, but I still feel like it's probably a little overinflated. We have changed, we do deal with a collection agency. We just made a change with that, so hopefully we'll recover some of that. But the patients that we have, that if they don't have any insurance, you know, trying to track them down and with a legitimate address and trying to recover is.
I understand. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying is that I'm trying to understand the revenue part of it. So with the revenue coming in, the revenue that you're showing right here, Michael, help me out here. Is this the money we collected?
Which line are you looking at, Commissioner?
It is total revenues.
So in total, he's got property tax.
Paper, or is this actual money?
So he's got, if you're looking at total revenue for his fund of $18 million, you know, a big chunk of that's property taxes. And then if you look at patient charges, which is budgeted for $10 million, that's where we're getting, you know, money from the patients, from insurance companies, from places like that. And then we supplement with property taxes, which is local taxes end up being a little over $6.5 million. And then they get a portion, business tax is also in their fund, which is divided on the property tax rate. So they do get a portion of that. But what you're asking about from patient collections is going to be right there in general service charges in the 43,000 line items. I think is what you're referring to when it comes to the collections in the past due collections right there.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Recognize.
Thank you. Same question as before. It was just mentioned that I think Las Casas and Walter Hill are coming online. I'm presuming this builds in a full year.
That's correct. We budgeted them for a full year. And then I want to expand on one thing to Commissioner Harris. The two convalescent positions, the hope would be that they would pay for themselves because those generate revenue as well. So I do want to add that we would anticipate that those paying for themselves in the future as they did more runs. But Commissioner Irvin, yes, they are budgeted for a full fiscal year, and we would anticipate potentially not hiring them until those stations came online or before.
And keeping in mind we all like conservative principles, what's any sense for the number for half a year?
You got it right
could be potential savings in the budget.
So the full year budget for them would be right under $1.4 million, so $700,000 or so.
Thank you.
Ron, how many ambulances or vehicles have you asked for in this budget?
We asked for 2 new units and 2 remounts, and that was a pretty significant increase because that has, over the last couple of years, has drastically went up. And, you know, if the ones that were in this budget year that we're in right now, we have placed that order, but we have no idea when we're getting them. Where we're getting them from, they have about 900 units to build.
So basically, you're taking a box off a used one, putting it on a new chassis for the 2. What's the cost on the new ones?
That's what the two remounts are, and they have went up also. I think the difference is around $50,000 is the difference in the 2.
But that's also equipment on that vehicle too, isn't it?
That comes out of a different line item. It comes out of health equipment.
So that's only vehicles then?
Yes,
okay.
sir.
So 4 vehicles, and that'll be enough to man these new stations with what you currently have in place?
Yes, sir. And I mean, and to be honest with you, we do have quite a few spare ambulances and some of them probably we need to get rid of. But if we were to total one today, we're looking at 2 or 3 years to be able to replace it. So it kind of makes us have to hold on to them.
Any other questions from the committee, Brian's budget?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
You recognize.
Thank you. What does the ending fund balance look like? I thought I had a... And what percent would that be?
So as of April 30th is when I'm gonna is what I'm gonna give you the numbers through, because we don't know how we're gonna end there yet. Their ending fund balance, if we ended today and we spent everything we budgeted, would be $10,644,335. And if we pass this budget as presented with no additional revenue, then their fund balance percentage would be approximately 30%.
Any other questions from the committee? Hearing none, Brian, we're going to accept your budget as proposed by the mayor. Add that to our approved column.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the sheriff's office.
Good evening. I'm Steve Spence. I'm the Deputy Chief of Administration. We agree with the mayor's recommendation. I go over a summary on our sheriff's office increase. We are requesting 43 new positions. 20 of those will be assigned to patrol, 1 patrol sergeant, 9 deputies assigned to SRO, 1 for each high school additional, and then 1 for the alternative school that's on South Church Street. Request an administrative assistant assigned to the training division to oversee the paperwork with post-commission. Request an IT tech to help maintain, update, and add new cameras. 2 sergeants for our warrants and records division. Right now, we only have a lieutenant and sergeant, and they're splitting all 3 shifts. 1 evidence technician to make copies of the videos for courts and evidence. 1 phone forensic detective assigned to criminal investigation to collect evidence from the cell phones. 1 sergeant assigned to community service to oversee recruiting program. 3 deputies assigned to narcotics. These deputies will be working hand in hand with narcotics on investigations. 2 TAC officers assigned to communications to make mandated violent offenders in NCIC. That covers all the new personnel requests. We're asking to reclassify 2 administrative assistants in CID, raise them from a pay grade 19 to 21. They're doing work outside of their job description, so we want to recognize them and give them the right job classification. Another reclassification in an admin assistant in narcotics. The same thing, they're doing work outside of their classification. We want to recognize the work they do from a 19 to a 21. Asking to reclassify a corporal at the courthouse from a corporal to a sergeant due to him doing sergeant duties. Reclassify a corporal in transportation to sergeant. He's doing sergeant duties. And then reclassifying a sergeant in training to lieutenant. This person was just promoted to SWAT commander, and we want to recognize him as a lieutenant when he goes out on SWAT calls.
Chairman.
Recognize.
Explain line item 106, because I'm not understanding it.
That's the domestic violence detective that was been on a grant. The grant paid 75%, and then 25% was paid by the county. We're asking for it to be adopted in the budget, and that line item, that person would be moved to the deputies' salaries. That's why there's no salary there, sir, on the 106.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Irvin.
Can you give us an update on the state money for SROs?
Yes, sir. Right now, when they first announced this grant, it was supposed to be $75,000 per SRO. Just recently, they've said it's going to be $75,000 per school, but we won't really know all the details till July or August before they release the details what available.
Chairman Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on the SROs, these are all high schools that you got mentioned. How many SROs per high school will we have?
We'll have 3 at each high school if this is approved. And it's due to the increase in threats to populations in these high schools.
Okay. And all of the other schools have at least one?
One middle school and one in all elementary schools.
I know that they used to kind of share back during the day, but every school has to dedicate at least one SRO.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I didn't see the budget presentation on public safety, but on the 20 patrol deputies, can you describe the need that y'all are having with the deputies?
Yes, sir. The call volume right now in patrol, the officers are responding from call to call. They're not actually able to go out there and do proactive patrolling. They're going to call. And we have 3 of our zones bigger than the square miles of the city of Murfreesboro. So we've got officers out there in 77 square mile zones, 86 square mile zones, and 103 square miles. So we're just trying to get the proper manpower out there to be safely and to service the county.
So at any given time, how many patrol officers do we have in a zone?
If everybody shows up on the shift, there's 9 deputies if they're not off from vacation, sick days, or court, or so forth. But we have a total of 94 assigned to patrol, and that's counting your captain, 3 lieutenants, sergeants, and corporals, and then deputies assigned to each shift.
Okay, so a zone, there's how many shifts? You said 3?
Yeah, 3 shifts, yes, sir.
And so that's 9 per shift?
Yes, and we have 8 zones.
So 27?
Yes, sir.
And would this make it adding, you have how many, 8 zones?
Yes, sir. And those 8 is the rural area. Then we've got zones in the city of Murfreesboro, Laverne, Smyrna that we actually also service. We take reports and serve papers in those zones.
Okay. And so the patrol deputies, what other tasks do they do? I mean, do they serve warrants, or is that like a one officer, or?
Yes, sir.
Other than patrol and reacting to a call?
Yes, sir. They patrol their zones, respond to the calls when they're called, but they also serve civil papers and criminal papers. If there's downtime to do that, most time they're going from call to call because of the call volume.
But there's other officers that could, like warrant officers or?
Yes, sir. That's a totally different division of criminal and civil warrants.
Mr. Chairman.
One question.
Chairman Phillips.
Salary increase, what's the percentage?
Sir?
The salary increase, what's the percentage? 3.25?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay,
And all the
very good.
salaries, we have the table left included.
Okay. Are you having any problem retaining employees?
Not on the sheriff's office
Are they
side.
using this as a training ground to go somewhere else?
No, sir. We've been blessed on the sheriff's side. They're staying and being dedicated to us.
Thank you.
Chairman Phillips, you recognize.
Thank you. Chief, if you would explain the number, or how to say it, the number of SROs that we will have versus deputies that are on patrol.
Yes, sir. We currently have 68 SROs, and it'll be 77 with the 9 extras. And then we have 94 patrolmen, counting supervisors in patrol. And then we're asking for 21 additional to the patrol division.
Just for my personal information, we'll have 3 SROs in every high school.
Yes, sir.
That's the goal anyway.
Yes, sir.
And they're available after hours for sports activities?
Yes, sir. They work with the mentor kids after hours with special events.
And just, I guess, one other question. During the summertime, when schools aren't very active,
Yes, sir.
how do we utilize those SROs?
The SROs in elementary, where they don't have that many events, they work patrol, civils, and criminal, and sometimes they come work at the courthouse. But the middle school and high school, they've got enough comp time, they take off.
Thank you.
If I'm not mistaken, they've also filled in for patrol when we were hurting too. I know that's happened in the past. I don't know whether it's currently happening, but.
Yes, sir, they do in the summertime too, fill in.
Mr. Irving.
And the numbers you've just quoted, that'll be adequate for how long? How many years will those numbers work?
The numbers I just give, the number of personnel?
Yes.
That's for the, per day, there's zones on the shifts. That's how many is assigned to the shift.
No, I mean, you had 77 SROs and I forgot how many, 94. How long will those numbers be fairly adequate?
It would be hard to tell. It depends on what happens with the population and then the growth of the schools. If we build new schools, we'd have to add more SROs.
Mayor Carr.
Yeah, if I could, Deputy Chief. So this personnel increase is not unlike what this body did last year about catching up with salaries when we did a 15 and 20% pay increase, which was sorely needed. And it got us to a competitive wage, whereas Deputy Chief Spence said that we were able to retain people. And as you know, it's a whole lot easier to keep and retain than it is to constantly recruit and train. So this doesn't even get us to the minimum threshold as produced by a state study, but this does significantly get us back to a place where going forward, we're not unlike the language used by the Board of Education. It's a maintenance of effort. So now we're just keeping up with the growth. We're not trying to catch up with the growth. We're just keeping up with it. So downstream, as we've seen a proposal from Dr. Sullivan for a couple of high schools, obviously at those high schools or a middle school or an elementary school, we're going to have the appropriate SRO. Or if our population continues to grow as it is at 10,000 new residents every year, 9 to 10,000 new residents every year, we're going to have to make the necessary adjustments to keep up with that population growth. But it's our goal, and it was the goal of this particular part of the budget, to get us caught up so we could now, going forward, just have that, what I refer to, and it may be an inappropriate term in this example, but a maintenance of effort, so we don't have to play catch up.
So, to my understanding, in last legislation, did the state not give, is the state not going to give us funding for more SROs? So
that's a great question. Yes, they did, and that's what Chief Spence was talking about a minute ago. We're getting the grant from the state was for $75,000 a school. What we won't know from the governor's office till, I believe it's like August, isn't that correct?
That's correct, Mayor.
Until August is about how they're going to exactly appropriate that money. There are many counties, especially rural counties, Commissioner, that don't have any SROs. We understand that that's a priority, but we don't know what that does to us. And so, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, this was the first county in Tennessee to have SROs and one of the first in the Southeast. And so we're just not sure where we're going to fall in. We believe we're going to get some of that grant money. Exactly how much? Do we get $75,000 per school? How long does that grant money last? We won't exactly know, I think, until August.
One thing I wanted to kick around a little bit. I talked to Michael and the mayor about this, and one of the big cost items on the patrol division are the cars. Of course, we're going away from our leasing program that we had, and you've seen the figures on here for the car purchases this year. One thing we've done in the past with the schools on our capital projects where we're doing re-roofing, air conditioning replacement, all that, we set aside a penny call it Dr. Bullen's school penny. And I thought, well, maybe that's something we need to look at for the sheriff's department because we're having to continually purchase these vehicles. And if we know ahead of time, you know, we've got X number of dollars set back. Now, after talking to Michael about this for a while, depending on where we put that, it could make difficulties for us. If we put it in the capital projects fund, it would be harder for us to move that out if we needed those funds somewhere else. So we could do that, you know, if the commission wanted to do it, or, you know, as we see fit each year, we can still do the funding like we're doing now. Say, okay, we need money for X number of cars. You know, we're going to have an average. It's probably going to be, what, around 1.5, somewhere in there per year, just to keep the fleet on an even keel. So, you know, that's money that we're going to have to budget. Michael might explain a little more about, you know, moving out of that capital projects fund and making that a little more difficult. But I wanted to throw that out there for our committee to consider if y'all wanted to look at that in the future, or we just budget it every year as we see fit, as we have been doing.
I will add, this year there is a little over $1.8 million in the sheriff's budget, and Chief Spence can correct me, but I believe that's going to purchase 25 patrol vehicles, but it's also going to purchase 19 lease vehicles that are expiring this year.
That's correct.
Is that correct? And so hopefully that number would go down a little bit. You know, it'll have to stay up again next year as we purchase the lease vehicles as they come off lease. But, you know, the goal would be not to be purchasing that many every year, because right now we're purchasing the leased vehicles, but we're also paying interest on the current leases we have, which some of those are quite high, so that's why we're trying to get away from that. But my recommendation was to budget it every year in the general fund how it is, because it provides greater flexibility to this body and to the sheriff's office to respond to emergency needs quicker and easier as far as transferring funds. If you were to put a penny or something in let's say 171, now that has reoccurring revenue in there, and that requires some different administrative burdens and requires some different requirements in that fund once it has reoccurring revenue that it does not have now. So that would, not that you couldn't move it out, because you definitely could, but it would provide less flexibility than if you were to budget in the general fund how it is now.
And more work on his department. So those are the two major problems I saw with that suggestion, but I did want y'all to consider that. Have we got any more questions on the sheriff's office budget? Any recommended changes, added to, take away? Chairman Harris.
So you've come to this budget committee several times about repairs.
Yes, sir.
Where is that in your budget?
338, and it's an increase of 75,000 on vehicle repairs. 338.
You feel that's enough?
We hope so. Yes. But right now we're having a lot of issues with our Dodge Durangos. We've had Cadillac converters go out, transmissions, and just recently, just today, we've got relays and fuel pumps going out on the vehicles.
So, and this is for Michael and the mayor, our lease agreement that we have with Enterprise, when does that expire?
Well, it's dependent on the vehicle and when the lease of that vehicle was initiated.
We wanted to get out of it, Mayor, like you've been proposing.
Right. So,
what date could that happen?
so that,
Today,
Hey?
if you have enough money, yes.
right. So, and what we're doing is we're just not leasing vehicles, if that makes any sense. We're not re-engaging in those leased vehicles. So the point at which we no longer have a leased vehicle with Enterprise is when we're out of it.
That's why I'm saying the repair part of it.
Yes, sir.
Is that an adequate number?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And let me add, if I could, my apologies, Mr. Chairman. Let me add real quick. I had an opportunity last week to spend 2 days, not 2 full days, but a couple, 3 hours each day touring not just the facilities, but the jail. And I was really pleased and surprised. I shouldn't have been surprised, but the sheriff's office does a lot of their maintenance and repair on their vehicles now. They've got a shop back there with 2 lifts, and so they do brakes, they do tires, they do rotations, they do balance. They're starting to bring a lot of that work in for the trustees to do, and quite honestly, it's saving the county quite a bit of money. And I was impressed by that, and I think as their skill set grows over there, I think you'll see a continue bringing that kind of thing in. Now, major power plant work on motors and transmissions, probably not, but the wear and tear of these vehicles is being maintained by the sheriff's department, and I think it's an excellent idea to keep costs down.
We pay the maintenance even on the lease vehicles. So that doesn't make a difference on that line item as far as repair. Thank you.
And to add to the mayor's comment about the vehicles, we from January to April, with us doing some work back in the back, we've saved up to $16,000 just for the 4 months.
Chairman Gooch.
Thank you. I missed it. How many new vehicles are we purchasing?
We're requesting 25 patrol SUVs and then requesting to buy 19 lease vehicles that come off the lease in February and March of 24.
And so that'll cover the new SROs and the new patrol officers?
Yes, sir. We'll pass the older vehicles down to SROs. They don't run emergency traffic. Yes, sir.
And we still have our take-home vehicle
yes,
program?
Sir, we do. Yes, sir.
Okay. So you said it was 20?
25. And then
19.
Purchase 19 vehicles coming off the lease.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? You know, the only thing that I've noticed seems like year after year after we approve the budget, there's always somebody that got looked over and there's a request to adjust their pay. And my request to y'all is look over it again and make sure we don't have that problem.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments from the committee? Hearing no suggestions or changes, we'll accept the mayor's recommendation for the sheriff's office and move to the next, which is special patrols.
On special patrol, that's our DEA line item. There's no change, no increase on it. It's $20,000.
Chief, that is your, I believe that's your late duty.
That's the night watchman.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
sorry.
there was one increase on that, and that is going to be the pension amount that increased on that person, which is obviously out of our control, but that's the small increase on that budget.
Yes, sir. The total is $43,804. That's where Corps of Engineer reimburses us for patrolling the lakes during the summer.
Any more questions on special patrols budget? Hearing none, we will accept the mayor's recommendation and add that to our committee's recommendation on the special patrols budget. Next is the administration of sex offender registry.
This line item only changes $1,300, well, a little over $1,000 is due to the pension and salaries. The total is $101,368.
Chairman,
Chairman Harris.
how many employees does this have?
Just one.
One that covers this entire county?
Yes, sir. And the two reclassifications, the two secretaries, they help this detective do the entries, reporting, and so forth, and then they give them the report, and the detective takes warrants out if it calls for an arrest.
I just don't know. I'm just curious.
Yes, sir.
So you have a detective. So how many detectives are assigned to this registry or to these people's?
Just one.
Just one?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Last month, there were 78 visits from sex offenders last month.
Any other questions from the committee? How many people on the sex registry now?
I don't know exactly how many is on the registry. A little over 300.
Last time I'd seen it was the higher 200, so that's around 300 people. They have to report into the office, so those check-ins, and that's a lot of paperwork the state requires too. So.
Yes, sir. They have to let us know if they change vehicles, move, or so forth.
Right. Any other questions on the sex offender registry? Hearing no other recommendations, we'll accept the mayor's recommendation on the administration of the sex offender registry and add that to our approved column. Next is jail.
Yes, sir. The jail, we are requesting a building maintenance technician to help with the building maintenance, a vehicle maintenance tech. Hopefully we will put this, if it's approved, this person on evening shift to catch evening officers coming in, and then one administrative assistant to help with paperwork back in the jail. Just a summary on some line items that's increased back in the jail. It's 334 maintenance agreements. It's an increase of 71,000. This is due to the maintenance agreements, laundry room, kitchen equipment, elevators, chillers, and boilers. 399 contracted other services increase. This is Dr. Rudd, and this is per his contract with the increase of his agreement. Food supplies increased 152,000 due to increase of food. 499 other supplies and materials increase, 133,000. This is building supplies, building maintenance, the smaller projects, and then you have 707, the building supplies increase of 575. This is your larger maintenance, or if you hire somebody to come and do the work. We've got the modernization of the inmate elevator. Y'all approved this year to do the staff elevator, which they're working on right now. This elevator was built at the same time as the staff elevator, which we're prepared to go ahead and modernize it. The range wall is cracking. When they built the range in 2008, they didn't put a cap on the block wall. In 2010, we went back and put a cap on it, but in the meantime, water got in the mortar in the blocks, and we're having cracking. That's $150,000, but the city's going to help us pay half, so we had $300,000 total, but our half is $150,000. And then increase in the building maintenance due to aging building. The back part, the women's section is 86, 87, and then the other part's 92. Yes, sir. Especially with the doors and so much movement and going back and forth.
Chairman,
Commissioner.
on 399, does that include the doctors and MTAs?
That covers all of Dr. Rudd's fees.
Does that also include software?
Yes.
I'm asking you that is, we're in the middle of a lawsuit, a software company.
Okay.
And I'm sure we're using someone else, so I'm wondering, is that included in this?
Yeah. Does Dr. Rudd, I think Dr. Rudd uses his own software. Okay.
So Dr. Rudd has his own?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mayor.
While everybody's looking at the numbers, as I said earlier, I had the opportunity to spend a couple, 3 hours going through the jail, and thank you, Sheriff Fitzhugh, for inviting me over for that. I would strongly encourage every member of the County Commission to take a detailed tour of the jail and the facilities over there. And the reason I bring that up is that facility's quite old, especially because, and I didn't realize this, that I think the numbers for every year of a facility like that, it's really 3 years. And so the facility, as that facility gets older, the maintenance costs in that facility are going to go up. And I think what we don't want to find ourselves, and this isn't for today or this year, but I want to, it's down the road, I want to propose a solution or a special, maybe ad hoc committee that this commission would consider, because at some point in time, we're going to have to build a new jail. And that's going to be a big expense, and that needs to be, we need to start looking at that now, and so the federal government doesn't come in here and force us to do something that it's going to be even more expensive. If you don't trust what I'm saying, just look at Shelby County. And so what it's not for this budget year, but I would suggest before we decide on how we want to proceed about looking into that, analyzing the situation, determining how we want to move forward, that this body in particular go by and take a tour of the jail. And I'm sure Sheriff Fitzhugh will be glad to do that for you, because it's something we're going to have to address sooner than later. Again, the wear and tear on that facility is reflected in the ongoing maintenance costs that are increasing every year. So I'm just putting a bug in your ear right now, and this is something maybe we can take up in a couple of months and start to look into. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So what's our occupancy level right now in our jail?
720.
So what is that percentage? Because I know at one time Sheriff was dealing with a high number where it's like we're at a 80% full, or
yes, sir.
With me?
Yes, sir, I'm with you. Sheriff's gonna come up and cover that.
You're welcome. Come up.
Right now, when we reach 789 in our population, we'll be at 80% capacity. According to Tennessee Correction standards, once we reach 80%, then we're considered full capacity. The reason for that is that our cells are double bunked, but we have to do segregation on some of our inmates because of charge partners or fighting. We have to segregate them. Also, we have some mental health situations on our second floor, and these people also need to be in single cell as opposed to double cell, so that takes up our other 20% we have to maintain for a single cell basis.
So are you taking any prisoners from Nashville?
No, sir.
That's done?
Any prisoner that we house here are all charged in Rutherford County.
So 80%, so we're 30 people away from being full capacity.
We're close. We will bounce down to 7, and then over the weekend we'll hit up to 740, 750. Court comes back in session on Monday, and then we'll see it drop back down. COVID helped us to some extent because the Supreme Court issued an order that anybody nonviolent misdemeanor would be let out because of COVID. We went down to 535 during that time, but now we've bounced back to about 7. We're averaging about 720 now, so we're seeing that grow. To the mayor's point, we've already talking, we did a study pre-COVID on staffing analysis on looking at potential for what year would we reach where we need to look at a new jail. We're having that study redone now since we're post-COVID. And then also we've talked to the Tennessee Corrections Institute. The assistant director there deals with the building of jails, and so we've asked for his assistance that once we get to that point to start coming in and looking at us as to which direction do we need to go. One of the considerations is do we add to what we've got? The problem I've got there is behind our building, it's all floodplain. So it could be built on, but it's going to be an expense to build it up. Then, you know, do we go out the front, or do we have to look at just a whole new jail? So, but
about going up?
Well, we can't go up on our facility where we are. The way it's built, we can't go up.
So when they do jail certification, or when they come and evaluate, do they take this 80% into account?
Yes. They give us a little fudge room on that, as long as we aren't not, because we're registered a little over 900 is what we're authorized for, and they'll take a look at our cell capacities and how many have we got single celled and so forth of that nature. But they look at everything, our book work, how many times do we make rounds, suicide prevention, suicide watch, the kitchen facility, everything we've got they look at and evaluate. They usually spend, 3 people usually spend a couple of days in our facility. Okay.
You forgot about Bonnaroo. We usually jump our numbers quite a bit at that time. I have seen our numbers pushing 1,000. So we've actually managed to get them down quite a bit. Any other questions on the jail's budget? Something I want to remind you all again, this is not the last time you get to look at that. You see something later pops out that we missed tonight. You know, we're covering these fairly quickly, but you can bring them up multiple times in the future. Any other questions for Mr. Spence on the jail's budget? And hearing none, we're going to accept the jail's budget as recommended by the mayor and add that to our approved list. Next is the special purpose DEA fund.
There's no increase in that. It's the same as $20,000.
Are there any questions on the DEA fund? Hearing none, we'll accept the DEA fund as presented and add that to our approved column. Next is the drug fund.
The drug fund, there's no change in that. It's $438,000.
Michael?
There was a slight change in the drug fund due to increased revenue in there. We have to increase the trustees' commissions in there as well. And then also, we do pay over a portion of overtime out of the drug fund. And so that potentially could go up depending on the overtime. And I do believe we increased that a tad bit to coincide with the salary increases to match that as far as budgeted there. So that did go up slightly from last year.
Any questions for Chief Spence on the drug fund budget? And there are no property tax in this fund. Chairman?
Thank you. So just remind me, where did this come from? Confiscated cash or?
From drug seizure, drug arrest, they seize the money, or fines that come from the court for drug charges comes in.
And so the drugs that we seize,
Yes, sir. And then if we seize
don't
cars,
sell it.
No, sir.
It's just the cash that we
Seize, yes, and property that we sell to, that we seized.
Okay. And what do you do with the drugs?
Sir?
What do you do with the drugs?
We destroy them after they go through court. They destroy them.
Any other questions on the drug fund budget?
I might add, Mr. Chairman, if Commissioner Gooch is interested, a walk through the evidence room should satisfy his interest in this regard, I think.
Any other comments? Hearing none, we'll accept the mayor's recommendation on the drug fund. Next and last is traffic control. Michael, you're going to do this one for us? Is that correct?
So this is for traffic control signal repair in the county. I guess Doug or Mike is not here. I don't believe we have but maybe 1 or 2 traffic control signals in the county. And then one of the things that you saw.
Actually have 6.
6? Oh, okay. But we don't spend much money on those. But we did this year in the planning and engineering budget. We are taking over the engineering services for the red lights in the county. And that increase was reflected in engineering services in the planning and engineering budget. This is for the actual repair of that equipment, not the engineering services. That would be reflecting in planning and engineering's budget. But there is no there is no increase from last year in this budget.
Mark, how many did you say were total?
6.
6.
Yeah, I've got them listed here if you need them.
Okay, that's no increase whatsoever. Any questions from the committee on traffic controls budget? Hearing none, we'll also accept the mayor's recommendation and add that to our recommended budget. Are there any other questions or any other business before us tonight?
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Phillips, you recognize.
On what Mayor Carr was talking about touring the jail, after the new committee structure is set in August and starts meeting in September, the Property Management Committee has been touring certain facilities. It might be prudent for the property management to take control of that tour and invite other commissioners there sometime this fall, September, October, something like that. I'll calendar that, and if you'll calendar that too, we'll make sure that happens.
Be glad to, and I think you'll find it quite enlightening, but thank you for that.
Been there and done that, but a lot of commissioners probably haven't.
Here, no other business, we're adjourned.